Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Makiko.
Hi. You work in Auburn?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is my first year.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you may be heard. That's where I spent most
yeah.
of my
Mhm.
career.
Yeah, I heard, yeah, good things about you.
Oh, that's nice. How's it going for you?
Good, good. Yeah. I mean, first it was difficult, but now I'm used to having Zoom meetings with my students, and so it's good.
Good. Well, I'm gonna, a little disclaimer to give to everybody. This is actually my first Zoom teaching
Oh.
experience. So fingers crossed that
Yeah,
it works out okay. Oh, good. We have some people.
great.
I didn't know how many people would. There's probably a way to know.
Well, first I heard that I had to register for this, but then I didn't need to, and I
No,
just clicked the link. So,
right.
mhm. And if you hit participants on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
you see how many participants you have,
Right. That I.
and they're on mute, and they might be able to unmute themselves, but you have a ability because you're the host. You have an ability to um, unmute everybody too.
Okay. Yeah, I
That
got.
should be the bottom of the participants.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll wait just another minute.
And I could unmute myself, so I don't know
Yeah, I think
what's happening.
probably I didn't set it up to have everybody mute in the beginning.
I can unmute myself as well.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seemed like adults could manage. Oh, okay. All right. And Makiko, when I record,
Mhm.
I'm just going to hit that recording button at the bottom to
I
start
think
record.
I think you're recording already. I see the recording
Okay.
red
Oh,
dot
good.
moving. So yeah.
Well, I didn't realize I was recording, but that's good. Although I don't know that everybody needs to see this chatter, but uh, well, it's 10:30, so I'm going to say welcome to everybody that's here. I'm Robin Fleck. I am a consultant with the Maine Department of Education with the ESOL program. Adjunct faculty and at UMF and UMO. And I spent, I don't know, 32 years in teaching English learners and coordinating the English learner program in Auburn, Maine. So I retired. My retirement party was a year ago this weekend. And then, this opportunity came up. So I've been enjoying myself and missing being able to go out and meet with teachers actually in the schools. And we'll see how soon that can happen again. But that is something that I am available for and can do that on a consultation basis. So it would be helpful to me to just have a little idea of what age level you work with. If you can say elementary, middle school, high school, maybe you can just put that in the chat, and that just helps me a little bit to know my audience. And today's topic is really just an overview of the language acquisition process and talking about the WIDA can-do descriptors. We had a request for this actually at one of our Wednesday afternoon EL it's kind of like a State Department meeting at 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoons. And if you haven't been able to join us, you're certainly welcome to do that. We have a few more scheduled, and April usually schedules a guest speaker, has a topic for the meetings, and we go close to an hour. Let's see, I'm looking to see chat, what we've got going here. All right, so we've got, okay, we've got anywhere from K through high school going. So it's a wide variety. So the presentation today really applies to all ages. Some of the examples I have won't suit what age level you're working with, but you'll get the point from these videos. So we're going to start with the language acquisition process right from the beginning, and Stephen Krashen is sort of the guru of the language acquisition process, and he talks about how important it is for students to have more than just people talking at them to learn language. And I'm going to share a little video with you that says it better than I can. So everybody, so disclaimer to all of you, this is my very first virtual teaching, my first experience with Zoom. So I'm hoping I'm doing it right. Okay, let's see.
Language the same and just talk about it. I'd like to take just a couple of minutes and give you some sample language lessons. I'll use a language that I'm sure you've heard before and maybe some of you speak, and you can tell me which of these two very brief lessons you like better. Here's lesson number 1. Wir werden jetzt anfangen, Deutsch zu lernen. Und ich möchte im Voraus sagen, dass nach meiner Meinung Deutsch ist eine sehr schöne Sprache. Und ich hoffe, dass Sie alle sehr viel Erfolg mit Deutsch haben werden. What do you think? Good lesson so far? Do you think if I kept talking to you like that, you'd pick up German? Not very likely. How about if I repeated it? Would that help? Probably not. How about if I said it louder? Would that help? Probably not. How about if I said it and you repeated it back? Again, I don't think that would help. How about if I wrote it out for you and you could see it on your television screen? That wouldn't help either. How about if I wrote it out for you and you copied it down? How about if I wrote it out for you and deleted every 5th word and you tried to guess what the word is? The truth is that none of these things help. None of these things mean anything, and I hope you can see that now. Here's lesson number 2. And for this, you have to watch me carefully. Das ist meine Hand. Verstehen Sie das? Hand? Everyone say, ja, I can hear you, even though it's a TV audience. Good. Kopf. Das ist mein Kopf. Verstehen Sie Kopf? Ja? Gut. Kopf. And here I'll draw a picture now. Kopf. Ist gut, ja? Schön. Kopf. Das ist Mr. Spock, ja? Mr. Spock hat 2 Ohren. Ohren. Verstehen Sie Ohren? Er hat 2 Ohren. Okay, Mr. Spock. Ja? Ach, nein. Entschuldigung. Okay. Augen. Verstehen Sie Augen? Augen. Wie viele Augen? 1, 2, 3 Augen. 3 Augen. Ist das richtig? 3 Augen? Nein. Wir haben nur 2 Augen. Mund. Verstehen Sie Mund? Und hier ist eine Zigarette, ja? Nein. Zigaretten sind nicht gut. If you understood lesson number 2, not every word, but more or less, I did everything necessary to teach you German. And now I'm going to share with you the most important thing I have learned about language. probably the best kept secret in the profession. We acquire language in one way and only one way, when we understand messages. We call this comprehensible input.
Okay. So what is your reaction to that little video clip about comprehensible input? Do you feel like your students that you work with have comprehensible input when they're in class? Are you the person responsible for trying to help them to have that comprehensible input? How does it work in your environment? Can we open this up to a little conversation?
I can speak to it a little bit. I have 6 non-English speakers in my earth science class, and they speak 3 different languages between the 6 of them. So I do a lot of picture drawing to try to teach earth science concepts to the entire class and them simultaneously. They also have English as a second language teacher who helps them and breaks things down, but perhaps we're doing pieces of it wrong. And I've lost them since we've moved to remote learning.
It has to be really hard. Does the English learner teacher collaborate with you in the same classroom?
She does for the science piece, but she is no longer with us since we've moved to remote learning.
Okay, okay. So that's really hard, right? How do you find the time to plan and collaborate? I'm sure people are interested in that.
We don't, right?
Okay.
The 5 minutes before and after class, and that's about it.
Okay.
Honestly.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Carrie.
Sure.
I find with, I find with the teachers I work with that teach the younger kids, like kindergarten, first, sometimes second grade, but they tend to be more hands-on and show more pictures and more manipulatives and real things anyway than some of the, say, 5th, 6th grade teachers. But I am often sitting beside my student with a whiteboard drawing really quick drawings and, like you said, doing it raw. It varies from one class to the next and varies from one class to the next how that teacher, I'm going to say, accepts me into their space too, because that can be very different between the schools I go to, is also just between the teachers. Takes a little while to get a feel for that.
There's often a misconception in the classroom when a student has social language. There's an assumption that because they can communicate socially with their peers, that they have a higher level of language to apply to the academic setting. And that's where we really need your help, all right? Because especially older students, it's very important for them to not feel or look different than their classmates. So if they can create a facade or persona that they're doing just fine, they're going to do that. And it's really critical that we are having ways to check in, that we are scaffolding how we present material, and knowing what level that they're at. And we're going to get to that in just a minute in terms of their levels and helping to understand that. Can you just raise your hands and let me know how many of you this is sort of a first experience with this material? Okay. Okay. All right. All right. That's helpful. All right. You heard Stephen Krashen, and I really didn't give him a proper introduction. He really is an expert in the field of linguistics. He's at the University of Southern California. He's published over 100 books and articles since 1980. You know, he's widely known for his theory of language acquisition. Krashen is Krashen, and he's had a big impact on the theory and teaching techniques in the field. And so you can always Google him for, you know, more in-depth information. Anything that you read from him is going to be well researched. He talked about some of the things that don't help, and you've probably seen in the classrooms when people are making an attempt, and I'll give you an example, you know, and oftentimes people, they don't intentionally do something that's unhelpful, of course, but some people, their initial reaction when somebody doesn't understand something is to speak louder. Now, if you have someone who has a hearing deficit, then that could be helpful, but that's not typically the case for our students. Just kind of raise your hand if you've seen that in your environment where people have tried to help students understand by speaking louder.
Well, I was an exchange student when I was in high school from Japan. And I remember all my math teachers and English teachers, they spoke louder and slowly for me, but I just didn't know the words, you know, so I didn't understand what they're saying. So, yeah.
And how did that make you feel when the person repeatedly did the same thing and you still didn't understand?
Well, I felt bad when, you know, teacher trying, you know, when I knew teachers trying, but I felt sometimes, you know, people say like, huh? Or, you know, they're very impatient with me, then, you know, I don't know, I just felt bad.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Makiko, a personal experience. Has anyone else ever seen their students demonstrate a reaction when teachers are trying to use some of the strategies that Stephen Krashen talked about that are not particularly helpful? Have you seen students just sort of shut down and give up, not really try? Does that can be a common reaction? Or just say yes and nod their head like they understand because they don't want the teacher to keep, you know, coming at them? Okay, I'm seeing some heads nod to that. Yep, that's pretty common. So those check-ins, the frequent ways to check in with student understanding, and even having students turn and talk to one another about a specific focused point or question so that students are interacting and you can have a peer check-in. So quite often students will feel more comfortable with a student that they work with to share their ideas and take a risk than to share in front of the whole class. And with teacher, you know, monitoring and peers doing some, you know, checking and correcting at times and giving the proper information. It is one technique that's helpful in that case. All right, we are going to look at a lesson, and this lesson actually is geared towards younger children, but I think you could see this, and it's for students at the beginning stages of language acquisition. Okay, and it's really important to sort of see what happens with the girls, there's two girls, what happens with their language, and to think about, are both students functioning at the same level of language? And what is it about the activity that they do that produces more comprehension and more expressive language? So those are some things to think about, because we're going to use this video as a reference as we continue on. Okay, fingers crossed this works. Okay. Oops, wait a minute. I gotta rewind it.
Flashing, flashing, what do you see? I see a goldfish looking at me. Goldfish, goldfish, what do you see? I see a mother looking at me. Mother, mother, what do you see? I see beautiful children looking at me. I'm farmer. What do you see? I see a boy. No, pig. Pig. What do you see? I see a pig. Another pig. Pigs. What do you see? I see a horse. What do you see? I see a cow. Pig. Cow. What do you see? Horse. No. Cow. No. What is that? Pig. Huh? What is that? Oh, es un muñeco que los pájaros no se dan cuenta que son estos, ¿verdad? I see it. Pig. What do you see? I see a horse. ¿Qué es esto? Horse. No, dámelo. Abuela, ¿qué es esto? ¡Oh, la comida de ellos! Fruit. What do you see? I see hens. No, hens no. Mira. I see a car. Looking at me. No. See car, look. Eso no es car. ¿Qué es? Es una troca. Troca. What do you see? ¡Ay! No tiene. ¿Qué? Nada. Mira, no tiene manos. Sí, tiene manos. No. Sí, pero no tiene manos aquí. Yo creo que es un caballo. Yo creo que sí. Horse. What do you see? ¿Tú dijiste que tan grasa? ¿Será? Dogs. What do you see? I see a mommy. Dog. And me. Dog. Mommy dog. What do you see? I see cow. What do you see? I see a rooster. I see a cat. What do you see? Oh, mira, muchos animales. Look. Slow wet. I fall down. Me too.
So what did you observe with those two girls as they went through that activity?
Lots and lots of repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And they used the words that they had. And when they don't know, they switch back to Spanish, obviously, but.
And do you think that's okay? That they switch back to Spanish when they were
Yeah,
taking class?
absolutely.
I do.
Actually, that was one of the things I found phenomenal, is that my English speakers used their foreign language as much as they could to communicate with students in bits and pieces, which was kind of phenomenal to watch, actually.
I also noticed that the little one that didn't seem to have as much English relied on the other one to ask, what is it? You know, she was asking a more advanced speaker. So clearly she was curious, she wanted to know. And the other little girl was a great teacher.
And I noticed that by the end of the video, the child, the little girl who didn't appear in the beginning to have as much language, by the end of the repetitive activity and practicing and laughing and, you know, processing with her friend, she was, you know, using the complete sentence of, you know, horse, horse, what do you see? Where in the beginning she was just using one or two words. So that practice enabled her in a comfortable setting to repeat those patterns. Carrie, can you see an activity like this reinforcing a concept in science? Now, obviously not necessarily with brown bear, but, you know, can you think, do you think this type of pairing and working on something that's maybe a little bit fun and but repetitive being useful to high school students?
Absolutely. I tried to take my students and spread them out into lab groups so that they were, otherwise I found that they stuck together and relied on their own bits and pieces of language that they had together all day, because my class was the only one where they were mixed with other students. Actually, the rest of the day they were with themselves. And so I found that things like taking temperature measurements or watching and explaining an experiment and watching a progression of something happening were good activities where they could talk to other students and not have me hovering. And they seemed more willing to try their English with other students if I wasn't right there. So yeah, I do think those sorts of things are useful.
Thank you, Carrie. It just helps to give people another example that isn't at an elementary level, so appreciate that. Yeah.
I apologize. I have an IEP in 5 minutes, so I will duck out at that point.
Okay, no problem. We are going to move on to the guiding principles of WIDA very quickly. All right, wait a minute. Gotta go back to my share screen and turn these things off. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see this. Okay. So these guiding principles and everything that I'm going to share with you from WIDA is available on the WIDA website. There are so many resources there for teachers. And it's WIDA, WIDA .wisc.edu. So WISC, like the beginning of Wisconsin, WISC.edu. And then you can navigate through the site to find these resources. So they have updated these guiding principles, and there are some new WIDA standards that will be rolled out. They postponed the rollout a little bit given, you know, the current COVID situation. But in the fall, they'll be contacting us to, you know, and the state will be notifying teachers about the rollout plan. So they talk about multilingual learners referring to all children or youth who've been consistently exposed to multiple languages. So some students are referred to as English language learners, some are dual language learners, heritage language speakers, and students who speak varieties of English or indigenous languages. We want to value what each student brings to the classroom. We want to look at their assets and also the challenging biases that can influence a learner's independence or encourage their motivation with learning. Okay. We want to encourage students to develop their multiple languages. Okay, it enhances their knowledge, okay, their knowledge of their culture, and helps their flexibility in language use and increases their intellectual capacity. That's number 2. I'm just kind of zipping through these. You can all read, okay, but we understand that it's a process of learning over time. And there's some different bodies of research, some saying it takes an average of 5 to 7 years for students to reach their full potential in a language, and others saying that it's 7 to 9 years. Certainly, a student's language, social, emotional, and cognitive development are all interrelated processes, and depending on a student's prior school experience, prior life experience, as they begin to learn a language, did a student learn to read and write in a first language before they learned a second language? All of these factors can play into the length of time it takes. The other pieces, of course, are if a student has instruction that's based on good instructional practices and instruction that's consistent, okay, and has optimal learning environment. So from the experiences we've heard from our Zoom meetings with our teachers of English learners, it sounds like our teachers are not feeling like the virtual environment they've had is optimal. Everybody's trying to make the best they can of it, but certainly that's a factor and may affect when students come back to school in September. You may see that the students have sort of taken a step backward in their English language acquisition process, but they may have taken more than one step forward in their home language, that because they had more time to have rich conversation and experiences with their families as they're speaking their home languages. So let's see, I've sort of summarized some of these points, and again, you can go to this document as you go through at the WIDA website, but these guiding principles are looking for students to be working at a high cognitive level and to be developing language that will help them to interpret ideas, access information and concepts from a variety of sources, and to be using multiple modalities as they are learning. Okay. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing are the 4 domains that we are referring to when we're talking about developing language. Okay. So that is that piece of it. And now I'm going to share just a little brief explanation from Margot Gottlieb, who is another guru in the field of learning English, and she is going to explain a little bit about the can-do philosophy. Now, let's see. if I can. Where did they go? How do I get rid of that? It's in the way of my. Okay.
The can-do philosophy permeates everything that we do at WIDA. Assessment, professional learning, standards, and bringing content and language together is always to build upon the assets that children have. In anything that we do at WIDA, we're constantly thinking about how we can honor and not just celebrate, but really use the assets that children are bringing to the classroom. Culturally, linguistic, cognitive, and academic. Kids come into our classrooms with many ways of knowing, many ways of learning, and many different experiences that can enrich what we're already doing. Teachers bring to the classroom a lot of experiences also, and a lot of ways of knowing and doing things that also benefit the classroom.
Our can-do philosophy has many tools built around it to help you understand and create language-rich, literacy-rich, and culturally appropriate classrooms. And it turns out those classrooms are good for all kids. They're engaging classrooms that work for every learner in your school. But they're particularly important for English language learners who need to learn English, but they also have to keep up with rigorous academic content.
We want to make sure that indeed this can-do philosophy is very much a part of the educational fabric and is infused in everything we do and you do. Our can-do philosophy really exemplifies who we are as educators and how our multilingual learners are indeed a tremendous resource, how their contributions not only to teaching and learning, but to our educational communities and to the world.
Okay. So you got to see a few people there from WIDA. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at one of the can-do booklets, and I'm going to show you the grade 3 to 5 booklet, but there are booklets for all of the various grade levels, and you can find all of them right on that WIDA website. Okay, so this is just one example, but they're all set up the same way and you can go through it the same way. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we have seen so far before I go on to that? Nope. Okay. Okay, something isn't working. Hang on. Well, okay, can you see the can-do booklet now?
No.
No? Okay. All right, let me see. Sorry, everybody. Try this one more time. There, is it working? Can you see it? Yeah? Okay, all right. Okay, so there is a booklet for each grade level cluster. We actually have pre-K, we have K, we have 1, 2, we have 6, 8, and then 9, 12. All right, and within these booklets, you have your performance definitions, okay, and you have your can-do descriptors. And this is kind of a tidy little way to help give a snapshot of what students are doing at the various levels, okay? So the booklets are going to talk about social and instructional language, the language of language arts, language of mathematics, language of science, and the language of social studies, okay? So their performance definitions are organized into 3 parts: linguistic complexity, vocabulary usage, and language control. So linguistic complexity is the amount and quality of speech or writing for a given situation. Vocabulary usage is the specificity of words or phrases for a given context. And language control would be the comprehensibility of the communication based on the amount and types of errors. Okay. So again, I'm skipping a little bit just because of time. And this goes bottom up. So when you're looking at the chart, you're going to start at the bottom. So students who are entering, all right, this is giving you a little bit of an idea. Students who are commonly called newcomers, you're going to be looking for them to be using pictorial or graphic representations of the language in a content area. They're going to be using single words, phrases, chunks, okay, one-step directions or choices, yes or no questions, lots of sensory, graphic, or interactive support. And the oral language piece, they're learning the phonological, syntactic, and semantic errors that often come when you're presented with basic oral commands, direct questions, or simple statements. So you want to provide, like Stephen Krashen did, the visuals to help students with that piece. So this is where the entering student is going to be functioning and need some of these supports as they're learning. Beginning, okay, general language related to the content area. So if you're learning parts of the body, you're going to start with knee rather than patella. Okay, and quite often, I think it's, you know, where I taught in Auburn, it was in 5th grade that they were doing human anatomy and science, and they were using, you know, patella, scapula, you know, all the big words, and it was very easy for the teacher to say, okay, I'm going to take that back. And let's get the basics. Let's do knee, ankle, elbow, collarbone, shoulder, before we get into the next level. So you're going to be expecting that a student operating with phrases or short sentences in their oral language, you know, and their writing. We know that writing comes after oral language in developing. So if a student is speaking in short sentences, when they write, they might write in phrases and need your support to expand those phrases into sentence form, or they might need some sentence frames with some modeling, and as their language increases, you can take language out of those frames that becomes less supportive so they can do it on their own. Okay, level 3, developing. Now we're getting into some specific language of the content area. Students are speaking in, starting to speak in expanded sentences and some paragraph formats and writing. So there's a really big jump between level 2 and 3, okay? And they're starting to really show some of good understanding of the phonological and syntactic structure of the language. There's still going to be errors that occasionally get in the way of communication, but they can convey their meaning here in level 3. And in level 4, now they're expanding that knowledge, and we're really looking for the specific and some technical language within the content area. You're going to have a variety of linguistic complexity in your speaking and in your writing, and you're going to see minimal mistakes around the phonological, syntactical, and semantic errors. And at this level, for the state of Maine, with our access testing, which is the testing that students who are identified English learners take annually, and typically in Maine, it's been in the months of January and February. If they score a 4.5 on their access test, that is considered strong enough to exit from the English learner program and services. However, that's also based, each district designs its own exit criteria. So for the testing component of the exit criteria, that's the state mandated exit score. Okay, so these are the levels that if you're supporting students, you're supporting them in level 1 through 4. When a student is identified, obviously entering, you're working here, but you're always working towards the next level. So if you have a student who came back with access scores in the 2s, you want to be knowing that your goals are to get up into the 3s. Okay, so the goal is not to stay in level 2, but you always want to be setting your sight to, if you're using general language now, how can I work in some specific language? And so when you're writing goals or thinking about planning for students, you want to think about that piece. This is a lot of information. Any questions about this so far? No? Okay. All right. Okay, I'm gonna, so these can-do descriptors, they're a resource, okay, in addition to your standards, and they can be really helpful in sharing these descriptors with your classroom teachers, your administrators, helping people to understand how the progression of language develops and what the goals are for these students. It's also helpful when students have their access scores to take a look at those scores and be doing the planning for next year. Also, keeping in mind that test scores are one measure, and so you need to be looking at the performance of the student with their independent work, with their class work. Do they line up? I know some of the feedback that we've gotten from teachers is that the speaking scores on the access testing didn't necessarily line up with what teachers observe in classroom performance. And so that's sort of another thing to look at. But these descriptors can be useful to mentors, tutors. They can be useful in developing or co-developing lessons and unit of studies, how to set the language goals. They can be useful with parents. They're they're just a little bit more concise and written in language that's easier for everybody to use. Some of these language goals can be incorporated into IEPs for English learners with identified disabilities. And that's something that we are working on at the state level to try to give some more guidance about how to do that. And in my mind, the best of all worlds is if we could mesh the new WIDA standards with the standards, you know, that they're using to write the IEP goals. And if there was a way to have a crosswalk that we could put that together, that would be really helpful. So you can look at that more in depth when you go through it. But this is what the can-do descriptors look like within a booklet. So over here, you've got your domain. So here you've got listening. And under level 1, these are some expectations you could have for students, that they could point to pictures, words, or phrases. They could follow one-step oral directions, and you might have to do some TPR, total physical response. If you want everybody to put their notebooks in their desks, well, if they don't know the preposition in, you might have to, as you say it, go over to a desk and take the notebook and put it in, okay, to give the model of that. It's important for teachers to really have a grasp of that, because in school, usually directions have more than one step in them. And so for teachers to know that they might give a direction and then repeat the direction, breaking it down into single steps for those students that need it. And honestly, it's probably more than just the students who are learning English that would benefit from having that multi-step direction broken down into single steps. So this gives some really clear guidelines about what students can try to do at the various levels that they're functioning at. And we screen all students as they come into the program, so you have a place to start. You have a level to start from your WIDA screener that's been done. So there's your listening, reading, and writing. Now, remember, what I'm showing you is the grade level cluster of grades 3 to 5, okay? The level 1 and 2, at all the grade levels, I mean, a lot of this looks the same at your varying grade levels, okay? It's just more about what's expected in terms of content and written performance as the grade levels increase. They also share these in Spanish, the can-do descriptors for parts of our country that can benefit that. So like I said, these can-do booklets are available, you know, they're free, they're online. Your districts may have purchased copies. They're, you know, they're like in a little spiral binder, you know, kind of coated paper. They're pretty light, and, you know, they're useful for planning and to, you know, but it's nice that we have it online so that you can share these with teachers that you are working with. What do you think for the little girls that we watched the lesson for? Just curious, where do you think they are in their language proficiency? 1, 2, 3, 4, where would you put them? Oh, I have to stop share, huh? Okay. Yep. So Anna says she'd put them at an entering level in the chat. Yeah, and it was interesting. Anna, I agreed with you that particularly the little girl in the right, although as she became more comfortable with the activity, I saw her moving into beginning. And the girl that seemed more confident, I would say she was, I would agree, Kathy, that she was, you know, more in the level 2 area. And we only saw a snapshot of those girls working with one another, but definitely, you know, I think we're in the ballpark there. Okay. Any questions about any of that we've gone over? I mean, so it's a little dry, but these can-do booklets are so useful. All right, I'm gonna stop that. And let's see, okay, we're back. And I think we've lost a few folks because they had appointments with students and whatnot. But there is one more piece that we have time for, the can-do key uses. So hang on, I'll get you that, and then you'll have descriptor. There we go. Oh. All right, so in the updated version here, we are looking for your students to be able to recount, explain, argue, and discuss. And I believe that in the newest ones coming up, they're going to look for students to be able to do narrative discussion and then also opinion discussion and have the language around that. And you're going to see more about that. Okay. And so again, this document is going to help you convey to other teachers, coaches, assistant teachers, specialists, support staff, and your administrators, what needs to happen for your English learners' language development and how you can all work together to make that happen, so that we're not just the teacher of English learners is over in this part and the language arts specialist is here, you know, and the curriculum coordinator's up here. We want to see us all coming together and really all of the strategies and the work that's been done through WIDA is really something that's good for all students, okay, if you really take a good look at it. All right, so this is this is the key use of recounting. All right, so it's become more specific, those descriptors, okay? And so WIDA's had an evolution in how they have used the can-do descriptors, and they don't want us to throw out what I just had shown you before, but they have evolved and refined it, okay? And so this is, and part of this is also to match the language in the Common Core standards, because we have, at least 38 states, and we might even be up to more states than that are using this. And so they try to align with Common Core. So key uses of recount in all 4 domains. And remember, your domain is over on the left here. And then here we've got the use. And then you've got your level, EL, English Language Proficiency. That's something that they added. Level 1, the entering, emerging. Okay, so you can see that they've also changed this language from entering and beginning to entering, emerging, developing, and the expanding, bridging, and reaching. It's the same. So it's kind of a an evolution of how things happened here. And I just thought it was important for you to see how it's changed a little bit, so that if you go to look at this, you'll say, well, that's a little bit different, and that this is why. Okay, so here's key uses of explaining. Again, the uses here, the domain, and then you go across by levels for that piece. And I apologize, I'm going through this quickly. You could, there are all-day workshops on this. I'm just trying to give you a little snapshot so that if you go to the WIDA site, you can, find this and spend some time with it on your own. And there will be, I think, professional development opportunities for people as well through WIDA. So here, use of argue, the domain, and the levels. Okay. And it just keeps going like that. So that was written in 2016. And so, like I said, the 2020 standards are coming out. My understanding is that the can-do descriptors, what I just showed you, will be there, but they're adding expressing opinion. Last I knew. Okay. And you never know, that might change. We are all learning to be very flexible these days about things. So we have a few minutes left. Are there any questions about anything that we've done today? Just kind of a brief overview. No? Okay. Well, I want to say, for those of you, some of you expressed interest in receiving CEU for this hour workshop, and I can send you a certificate. So if you would email me at robin.fleck@maine.gov. Robin.fleck, F-L-E-C-K, @maine.gov, all lowercase. Then I will email you a CEU certificate. And I want to say thank you to all of you for being so patient with me on my very first virtual teaching on Zoom. I'm missing the interaction, and I'm missing the moving around, and I tried to have some visuals, for you, but it certainly gives me an opportunity to see what teachers are experiencing as they're trying to work with their students who have, less language to work with, and maybe not a conducive environment for a virtual experience. So thank you all for making the time to be here today. Wish you well.